Friends, there's a difficult conversation we all have to have. It's a conversation about the country of Qatar. In the past 15 months, the Jewish world and the state of Israel have awoken up to what the meaning of the poison of Qatar is. The poison of Qatar comes in the form of money. And just like the poison of a snake, in the beginning, it doesn't hurt so much and you don't realize the danger. Qatar reaps the fruits of its poison decades after it sows them. We've seen that in university campuses where Qatar first comes, very generously spills in a ton of money, gives chairs to universities, opens up clubs, names buildings, and it all seems fine, doesn't seem so harmful. After all, what's the big deal? They're opening another Middle Eastern Studies department here, another department there, more student clubs here and there. We didn't know what the reach and impact of this movement, of these donations are, until we saw what happened in the past 15 months with the absolute explosion of outright hate and anti-Semitism on campuses. The same is true in media. We saw Qatar put in tons of money to Al Jazeera. Decades and decades of broadcasting hate to Israel have exploded in the past 15 months. The same is true to what Qatar has done in funding Hamas and hosting Hamas leaders in Qatar and Doha. Same thing, just like poison. In the beginning, it may be a little prickle. It may even feel pleasant and warm, but the bottom line is your body then becomes numb, and then you can even die from it unless you treat it. We need to talk about Qatar and the Jewish community. It's a painful conversation, but unfortunately, Qatar has been pumping money in to many parts of the Jewish community. Now, it doesn't mean that those who took the money in every case meant ill, but it does mean that we need to ask ourselves what Qatar we're getting in return. If someone gives you money, you need to ask, what's the return? What are they getting back? And why did they do it? We've seen Israel investigating now. There's a criminal investigation. 3 people that were close assistants of Prime Minister Netanyahu have been also receiving consulting fees from Qatar. Qatar could have bought Times Square. They could have put their information on every billboard there for a whole year, and yet they decided to put money and hire advisors that happen to work for Israeli Prime Minister Netanyahu. Clearly, there's something else going on here, and that's for the Israeli police to investigate, not for us in the diaspora. However, there is a lot of money that also went into Jewish organizations doing PR for Qatar. There's money that went into Jewish individuals doing stuff for Qatar. It doesn't mean that every one of them meant ill, but it does mean that every single Jewish person needs to find out who was getting money from Qatar and what Qatar got in return. Why did they buy the goodwill of so many Jewish communities and organizations? We've seen Qatar be so cynical and sadistic, playing both sides of the hostage crisis, where on the one hand, they tried to infiltrate the negotiations as some kind of good faith negotiators. On the other hand, we know that Qatar are on Hamas's side. Same is true for money coming from Qatar to the Jewish community. Who are they trying to buy? Who are they trying to silence? And what role did they have in shaping what's going on in our community? Very important thing to look into. Anybody who took money from Qatar in our Jewish community needs to make it very clear what services they rendered and what impact that had and what they'll do to change that in the future. Any institution, any individual that got money from Qatar should be clarifying to the rest of us what is going on. Anyone who's currently receiving money from Qatar, from the American Jewish community, needs to make it clear that they are. You need to make sure we all know when you speak, when you're saying, oh, Qatar is such a great country, tell us, are they giving you money? And if they are, what's that in return for? Very important conversation that needs to be had. The people of Israel are awakening and reckoning with the horror of Qatar's cynical poison money, where they inject it. You don't feel so much pain, but then you can find yourself dead. And the same is true for what we've seen in media. It's true for what we've seen on college campuses. And it also needs to be true that we look at this all in the Jewish community to make sure that the influence Qatar has in our community is not serving its own interests rather than the interests of the American people, of the Jewish community, of peace and security. We don't want anyone promoting the agenda of Hamas Muslim Brotherhood in our own community. That's not something we want. So let's make sure everyone comes clear. Whoever took should make it clear. Whoever took and didn't tell us should make it clear. And we should make sure that nobody ever, ever, ever sells us out to the emir in Doha.